Right, hello again. What's the matter? Oh, yes, I know. You're bored, aren't you? Sorry, am I disturbing your sleep? Yes. Tough. I need to crack on with this. Right, I've done a couple of TerrePure ones already, bourbons, or American whiskies actually, because it wasn't just bourbon. And this is another one from Total Wine & More, and this was 99 cents for the miniature. So Haze Parker I thought was the guy that played Jack in Will and Grace, but it turns out that that's Sean Patrick Haze, so I wasn't even close on that. Haze Parker Reserve Small Batch Bourbon Whiskey. So it is from TerrePure, who are in North Charleston, South Carolina. This is what the bottle looks like full size, and you are looking for a massive, I mean this is just like, we're talking top end here, $10 to $12 a bottle for a 775 CL. So this is high end stuff. So TerrePure were the company, or the sort of part of the Terrescentia company, who essentially use chemistry to mature whiskies and spirits faster than standard barrel maturation. So this does say on the label somewhere, where was it, that it was aged for at least 6 months. It did say on it somewhere, possibly. It would have been on the other one, but it is aged for at least 6 months. So impressive stuff. So yeah, who Haze Parker is, and you should be able to see on there. There is actually the picture of a man. No. Who Haze Parker is? No idea. Not a clue. Couldn't find anything out about him. I have no idea. It sounds like an impressive name, and it's got a picture of a bloke on it, so it must be something. It's one of these where it's kind of like, it says it's small batch, it's 100% genuine, an experience you can spend the rest of your life with. It's that good. What? So everything on this label is trying desperately hard to be tradition and older than it is, and this has been going for absolutely donkey's years and everything like that. Haze Parker, no idea. If anybody knows who Haze Parker is, because I'm willing to bet he doesn't exist, then please do let me know in the comments. Of the Haze Parker range, there is also a Haze Parker Spiced and a Haze Parker Cherry version as well. So, interestingly, about the one thing that is sort of kind of interesting in this is 45% rather than a 40. So it'd be interesting to see whether there's anything that the additional ABV is actually helping with. Now, I've seen a couple of reviews of this already. I've tried not to look at reviews before I've done any of my whiskies, just so that I'm not being sort of led to pick up flavours that aren't necessarily there, or the impression is it's not very good. So am I already thinking it's not very good because the consensus is, the general feeling is that it is a crap whiskey, or I'm just trying not to kind of get some preconceptions in me. However, in doing some research for this one, I did pick up a couple of reviews, and the reviews are pretty much awful, to be perfectly honest, because it was quite hard to find any information about this whatsoever. So we shall see. But yes, it's a TerrePure, so they're using oxidization and ultrasonic energy to mature the whiskies and spirits that they make quicker than you would put it in a cask. Now, I'm just going to have a quick look through my notes, because I know I've done TerrePure ones before, and they weren't terrible. What did we have? We had the Winchester, that was TerrePure, and we had a couple of others as well. Copper Pony Rye, Copper Pony Rye was TerrePure, and Winchester Straight Bourbon was TerrePure. Now, the Winchester wasn't that bad, so we'll see. But the Winchester, you were looking at $20 a bottle, so it was more of a premium one, whereas the Haze Parker seems to be the rock bottom price one. Jesus Christ, I mean, it's just pure alcohol. Oh, ow, that actually hurt. Now, I've just done the Watkins, and that was really unbalanced, and that was spirity. That was really quite spirity at 40%. There's kind of a background of corn, but it's so overpowering of alcohol, it's ridiculous. And it's a proper, there's a methylated spirits feel to it as well. Now, we'll give it we'll give it a chance because the Watkins was quite spirity on the nose and then ended up being quite palatable, unbalanced, but it was relatively drinkable. Not brilliant by any means, but it was okay. That's really overpowering nose. That's not great. It's kind of a mess vibe to it as well. Remember, this is 6 months old. Now, nowhere near as spirity on the palate. Okay, there's some flavour in there. There's not a lot. There is nothing of the spiritiness on the nose that there is on the palate. There's barely anything at all. There's a quite weird... It's kind of like blackcurrant, and it's kind of like a blackcurrant, like opal fruit, but one that's been sat in the sun for a while and gone a bit melty and a bit kind of flaccid's the wrong word. There's some odd flavours in here. There's sort of a chocolatiness. That one really burnt the back of my throat. There's kind of a milk chocolate, but it's like the cheap milk chocolate that you get in when you get like Christmas advent calendars. I don't even know if they do them in the US. So if you watch them in the US, let me know if you do advent calendars. But if you don't, I'll explain. You have a box and you have little cardboard doors on all of them, 1 to 24, and it goes. You start the 1st of December, and you open each door, and behind the door is normally a bit of foil which protects everything, and then there'll be like a little shape of chocolate. Now, you've got a choice when you get to mid-November and you get into right what advent calendar we're going to buy. You have a choice. You either pay over the odds, because the amount of chocolate that's in there is probably the equivalent of about 3 bars, and you're normally spending about 3 quid's worth, 3-4 quid for a pound's worth of chocolate, because it's in a big cardboard box and you get doors on it. But you can normally either pay a bit extra and get something like a dairy milk, or I mean, you can get really fancy and you get like the Thorntons ones where they've got like proper chocolate, big thick chunky bits in. But you go for the dairy milk one, which at least is some decent chocolate, or you go for the ones, and it's normally made by a company called Kinnerton, and it's normally branded ones like Hello Kitty and Minions and Spider-Man, and you tend to find them in pound shops for £1. And the chocolate in there is artificial and freaking horrible. It's like a really artificial, tasteless, slightly muddy chocolate. It's a bit like eating dirt. That's what the chocolate element in this tastes like. It's become harsher again. That doesn't taste like whiskey. That tastes more like a really, really cheap brandy crossed with rum. In fact, that mouthful tasted more like rum than anything else, but not a particularly good rum. It's a weird, slightly artificial sugariness to it. There's this artificial chocolate to it. It's shit chocolate. It's like a shit cheap chocolate and a shit cheap rum. And what it is a shit cheap bourbon. That's actually overpriced at $10. I think early times was about $12. Ancient Age was $12, and I'd have them in a heartbeat over that. That is that's weird. It's got weird flavours in, which make it kind of interesting, because you can kind of try and think, well, what is that? What is it that tastes like? But I wouldn't want any more than that. I'd probably have that in a night and spend a bit of time over it, a miniature, to be able to go, what is that flavour that I'm getting? Because you're searching back into things that you've had that you don't particularly like. It's like, what is that? It's like a really cheap rum. It's like a rum that we had when we were on holiday, and it was the house rum behind the bar, and I tried a nip of it just to see what it was like on its own, and it was really, really nasty, and that's why they put it into all the cocktails. But it doesn't taste like bourbon at all. It barely tastes of whiskey, to be perfectly honest. But there's barely any flavours there, and the flavours that are there are crap. And there's not enough in there that you would use it in a cocktail, unless you wanted the barest hint of a kind of generic alcohol flavour in amongst all. If you were making a massive punch, that would be absolutely fine, and that's probably what you'd use for $10 a bottle. But you certainly wouldn't drink it neat. And if you were mixing it, even in Coke, to be honest, that mixed with Coke. Now, I like Coke, and I can tolerate whiskey and Coke. I'd rather drink the whiskey neat. I'd rather have a good whiskey, drink that neat, and then have a Coke later on. But if you were going to drink whiskey and Coke, that would make a bad whiskey and Coke, because the sweetness, and it's a really weird artificial sweetness, would combine with the sweetness of the Coke and make it even more cloyingly sweet. It's really cloying. It's like the flavour in my mouth now is like I've just chugged a gallon of maple syrup, and not even nice maple syrup. And I like Coke, really don't like Pepsi, because Pepsi is too artificially sweet for me, whereas Coke I can kind of tolerate. The thought of that, Haze Parker and Pepsi combined, practically makes my heart stop, because it would just be like eating pure condensed sugar. That is not a good whiskey. That's not a good bourbon. It's not a good whiskey generically, irrespective of being bourbon. It is a bad whiskey. Steer clear of that, unless you want to pick up something like that to see how bad it is. I wouldn't have a problem with anybody paying 99 cents for that and playing with it and getting a couple of friends together and trying it and going, yeah, what is this taste like? Because there's some flavour in there. It's just not particularly good flavours, and I think it would bring out some interesting comments in terms of things it reminds you of that you didn't particularly enjoy. But that's not a pleasant whiskey by any stretch of the imagination. And at $10, I think it's actually overpriced. Yeah. But it's interesting to try these whiskies, to have bad whiskies, because if you didn't have bad whiskey, if every whiskey was really, really good, it would kind of get a bit boring. That's one of the great things about doing this challenge. This is 151, and they've all been different. I've not had one that tastes identical to the other. And I'll be perfectly honest, and it might be just me trying to find the best in everything, which is kind of what I do in life, is trying to find the best in everyone. But I've had far, far more good whiskies than I've had really, really bad ones. The really bad whiskies I've had, probably 10. The good whiskies, the vast majority of them. The fantastic whiskies, probably 20, 25 so far. But I've not had many, I've had some, but I've not had many truly, really poor, disappointing, unpleasant whiskies. And unfortunately, Haze Parker's one of them. Right, I shall see you in the next one. Cheers.